It's time for the Hockey Writers Grindline, a weekly show covering everything Detroit Red Wings. Brought to you by our own iconic top line of Wings writers. Sit back and enjoy the grind.
Welcome to the Hockey Writers Grindline. I am your host, Pat Brown, and joining me as always, my line mate, Devin Little. Devin, how you doing?
Always good to be here with you, Pat. How you doing?
Likewise, always good to be here. Great way to kick off our weekend. And we are thrilled to have you here with us for another grind. Joining us this week, a great friend of the show, Detroit Hockey Now staff writer, Nate Brown. Nate, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
I'm great. It's April. Needs to stop raining a little bit, but we'll get there eventually where it's nice and warm. So good to be with you guys. Thanks for having me back.
You could send some of that rain down to us in the desert. That would be fantastic. Would love it. Before we dive in head first, just a reminder for you at home, this week's show being brought to you by Morning Skate, a daily newsletter delivered to your inbox Monday through Friday, and it is jam-packed with the best hockey stuff on the planet. It's a daily dose of the latest NHL news, rumors, history, funnies, quizzes, etc. Just a little hockey fun and information brought to you every weekday from the Hockey Writers. You'll see a link right down there in the show description. Check it out, and hey, while you're down there, toss us a like, subscribe to the Hockey Writers channel. You know what's up by now. You don't want to miss anything that we've got on here. So check out Morning Skate. Check out the Hockey Writers YouTube channel. And, well, now, gents, let's talk some hockey, shall we? All right, we're going to start off with the obligatory oldie but goodie. One good, one bad from the week that was. And I might steal a whole lot of thunder here. So that's the beauty of being a host. Good, Ned. Welcome back to the good, Alex Nedeljkovic. Let me tell you, 46 save shutout against the Carolina Hurricanes. Who had that on their bingo card? Let me tell you, because Devin, we were taking a peek at the schedule as preparing for the weekly notebook, and I wasn't prepared to have any wins to write about. So gotta love that. One bad from my perspective. Why can't Detroit beat Ottawa? I just don't get it. Outscored 14-5 in the 3-game series, and Ottawa sweeps the season series against the Red Wings. That is hands down my bad for the week. So we're going to kick it over to our guest, Nate. One good, one bad from the week that was. What you got?
Oh, come on. I mean, you already stole it all. So I would actually say, you know what a great good was to see Jeff Blashill smile.
Yeah.
You saw when Philip Zadina scored that goal.
Yeah.
That poor kid has been snake bitten all year. It literally ricocheted off another ricochet that got into the net. And they pan over, and Bujagrass is talking about it, and then they pan over to Blash, and even Blashill is laughing. It was honestly like the last prior to this recent stretch, it was bad. I mean, through press conferences, even through just reading, through even watching the games, everybody was down. I mean, Dylan Larkin he basically had an Yzerman speech where, look, we got to get moving here. Different circumstances.
Sure. Well, yeah.
It was kind of nice to see everybody kind of laughing and enjoying the moment, especially in a win like that. The one bad, God, you took that one too with Ottawa. You know, honestly, it's draft position.
Huh?
It's
solid. That's a solid.
You just can't win right now because
literally and figuratively.
Yesterday's victory was so good for them. It shows they're moving. But if you're going to take it on, it doesn't help matters in terms of moving up that draft stock. So you're not going to win either way. Regardless, Yzerman's Yzerman. He'll figure out what he needs to do. But if you're a Red Wings fan, you're really hoping that you're going to get that one or two. They're going to jump up. But with a win, it shoves those odds down. But that's a bad. You'll take. That's
bad. Yep. No, good stuff, Devin. Before I kick it over to you, I'm going to throw in a bonus good.
Ooh.
My watch just told me Spencer Torkelson just hit a 2-run home run to give the Tigers the lead over the Royals in the 7th. So bonus good for any of you Tigers fans out there. All right, Devin, one good, one bad from the week that was. What you got?
Torkelson is legit. I've got two goods and one bad. My first good is that it's our other co-host, Kyle Knopp's birthday. So be sure to show him some love in that comment section. Happy birthday, Kyle. The other good, I'm going to kind of go wider scope here and say goaltending in general, because yes, Nedeljkovic got that shot out. Great to see him do that against his former team. But also, Grice, for his part, has looked really good in his last three starts. He's got a 9.932 save percentage, something like that, 0.934. And that's a far cry from where he was prior to those three games. So, we were talking about this last week, whether you just kind of go back and forth between them. If they're both going to play this good, then yeah, you probably should just kind of rotate them. Now, for my bad, well, we had to talk about the Ottawa game that they lost. Well, I'm going to talk about the Columbus game that they lost, because that was a really fun game to watch. Like, objectively, not even having a team to root for. That was a fun game. And, all the fans were in the building. Good crowd, lively game, had a little bit of everything in it. And the Wings fell short. It good to see them get that point. But with how electric that game was, that would have been the one that you wanted to see them pull out. But unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. But can't complain, because, like I said, it was a really fun game.
Good stuff. And that was Winged Wheel Pod night, I believe, at Little Caesar. So they saw a heck of a game. They seemed like they were down and out of that game. So just to come back was pretty cool. And they saw an entertaining game. So good stuff. Good perspective. Let's move on. Last 2 weeks, to your point, Devin, they've been a bit better for the Red Wings. 3-1-1 since breaking a 6-game losing streak. Their only regulation loss in that 3-1-1, Ottawa. So, gotta ask the question. And Devin, we're gonna start with you here. Is all forgiven? Everybody was ready as usual to send Blash to the curb. Everybody's reading a whole lot into Yzerman's comments post trade deadline about Blashill. Yeah, I believe you wrote an article on that, actually. Yeah. So, Devin, we asked you, is all forgiven with the Red Wings' recent decent play?
I don't know that all is forgiven, because you do have to take a look at the whole picture, and that includes the goods and the bads.
Stay tuned on that.
Yes, exactly. but I do think that this just kind of makes things easier to swallow, so to speak. You wanted to see them do this, right? If things were still how they were a couple weeks ago, I genuinely don't know that Blash would actually still be the coach right now. So for them to turn around and start to actually look more or less how they did prior to that rough stretch, that's good. That's where we want them to be. Record's not, they're not 500 anymore, and that's fine, because, Nate talking about draft position. Exactly. But yeah, it's you want to see them finish strong, because they made a lot of progress this year. And in, just the whole month of March, it seemed like all of that progress was going down the drain. And now that doesn't seem to be the case anymore.
Yep.
So I would say, not everything is forgiven, but it's making, it's nice to see the bad go further into the rear view mirror. Yeah.
Good stuff. Nate, over to you. Wings have been playing okay. Just shut out the Hurricanes 3-0. So is all forgiven? Is Blashill off the hot seat? Is Stevie Y going to head into the offseason with nothing but cherries and unicorns for Jeff Blashill?
All I can think of is, Ward and Norton. Nothing changes. I would say nobody knows what Steve Yzerman is thinking. Everybody can hypothesize and do it. And, in the words of John Tortorella, speculate away. There's nobody knows. I think, it was interesting because everybody made a lot out of that one screenshot of him during the Arizona game where they were just getting buried.
Yeah.
And he said something, and everybody was playing the mouth reader game. Dude, there's a whole NFL films thing made every year of the NFL where they create
lip reading.
Lip reading.
Oh, bad lip.
I know you're talking about.
That's good stuff.
But then if you go further, and Devin even wrote about this, where Eiserman specifically spoke to it. Everybody sits and thinks that, I have some ulterior motive. I don't. I'm like, what you see is what you get. Honest to God, I think what happened is the worst thing that happened for Jeff Blashill and the Red Wings is they started out hot. They played well. They were still in playoff talk all the way through the end of January. And then the bottom fell out because their schedule, which is brutal. Now, you add some injuries in there. You add some snake-bitten things, but there's definitely some things that you could look at. One, Michael Rasmussen finally is playing into that player that people hoped he would. But second, Jake Wallman, until he got injured, was really a great thing. Sundqvist has been great for them on a third or fourth line. Zadina's scoring goals. Is it what you want to see? I mean, at this point in the season, sure, you want to see a good draft position, but at the same time, you know what? It might just be that Blashill's time has come to an end. It just might be the longevity of 7 years. I mean, or knocking him. Oh, it took him 7 years to get 200 wins. What roster did he have?
Yeah.
Yep.
No disrespect. I don't disagree. There were moments where I was like 9-2. 10-3. I mean, the Lions can put up more points, and I mean, it's the Lions, but I don't think it's so much an all forgiven as I think it's kind of everything's kind of regressing to the mean. Eiserman will make his decisions at the end of the year, and everybody goes forward.
Well, I think that's a perfect segue. Oh, Devin.
Sorry.
Devin, we're running short on time on the front nine, but you got the last word.
I just have a theory I want to float out there. It's just with how they're kind of like come back to earth a little bit. I think that rough stretch that they had, I think that's when they lost their playoff hopes, right? And I think that this young team took that really hard. And I think that things kind of spiraled out of control because there was just a lot of disappointment going on. And now they know where they're at this season. They know they're not going to be in the playoffs. They've said Larkin has said that or whoever. And they've accepted reality, and now they know it's, got time to push for next year. So I think there's just a sense of the disappointment is gone now. They've accepted it, and now they're at a place where they can move on and start playing hockey again.
Can I add one more too? And you can take time away from me later.
So guys what killing me.
Devin's exactly right. Dylan Larkin talked about it after the trade deadline. The trade deadline had mind nuked them. He didn't say that. I'm saying that. Nobody knew. I mean, there were rumors Bertuzzi was gone.
Yep.
That affects a locker room no matter how you look at it. So that's kind of a post-trade bump where you're kind of in a rut. Devin's exactly right. In that sense, that's something that definitely was a factor. They kind of got out of that. And Blashill talked about Ottawa. Ottawa hit theirs earlier in the year. And well, maybe you played another 25 games. Maybe the Red Wings look a little bit differently. But I know out of time, so I will end there. But I thought it was a great call by Devin.
Well, here's the thing, right? Because it's a perfect segue regardless, because our next topic for the first half, the last topic for the first half of this show, is purely, did we expect more from the team this year than what we've seen, than where they're at right now? Did fans expect more? Literally, Nate, in my notes, I have they regressed to the mean, which was a literal phrase that you just used. I want to throw some things out really quick. I'm going to throw some statistics out there, because if anybody listened to 32 Thoughts, Friedman talked about Eiserman potentially thinking the rebuild is going to take longer than he initially thought. But just a couple of things for context, and these aren't crazy advanced stats, so don't jump all over me on it, but it's simple numbers here, right? When I talked to Helene St. James when she was here in Arizona for the Wings Coyotes game, she said Eiserman doesn't expect the world. He just wants to see some improvement. Well, last season, the Red Wings took 48 out of a possible 112 points, so that points percentage of 0.429. Where they stand right now, they're at 0.459. 68 points out of a possible 148. That is marginal improvement. Now they've still got games left to play, and we'll see how those go. But that is technically speaking, not much, but technically speaking, marginal improvement there. So we're going to ask the question here to wrap up the first half of this show. And Devin, we'll start with you this time. Did you expect more from this team, or as Nate so eloquently put it, have they simply regressed to the mean?
I think that if our viewers, listeners, love you all, go back and check out our episodes prior to the season. You'll find that how we were talking about the Red Wings is very much in line with where they're at right now. I think that seeing them hang around the playoff picture well into the new year might have changed expectations for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, this team still has a lot of work to do. To that point on 32 Thoughts, the whole left side of the defense needs work. Like there's nobody on the left side that's going to be on this team in 5 years, maybe Wallman, and I'm not even ready to commit to that. Forwards, depending on how the lineup looks, you've got one line that works and then 9 other guys that maybe can chip in. There's still a lot of work to do.
Mm-hmm.
And while it was great to see them hang around the playoff picture and play meaningful games into February, you've got to take a step back and realize that this team is not, even if they squeaked into the playoffs, they would get killed in a 4-game sweep. That's not what this team needs right now. This team needs to continue building, play meaningful games as long as they can. Absolutely. But where they are right now, I think is exactly where they are. I don't think there's any smoke and mirrors going on. I don't think they're overperforming. I don't think they're underperforming. They overperformed in the beginning of the season, but where they are now is exactly where they are, just based on how that team is constructed right now.
I completely agree with everything you said, Devin. Nate, you got the last word. You kind of went into it in your last response, but tell us, did you expect more out of the Red Wings this season, or are they right about where you figured they'd be?
I mean, this is the kid that gives a presentation in class that's like A+ work, and then you're just like, well, yes, I agree. Sit down.
What he said.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? I think everybody got out of the gate really early with the way that they played Tampa in game 1.
Yep.
Larkin doesn't get tossed out of that game. They probably end up winning that game. And then you got unrealistic expectations. Yeah. Those first 4 games were unbelievably exciting for a Red Wings fan base that had watched this team just meander through 2 brutal seasons. I agree with what Devin said about the defense. I honestly think that's where Yzerman's going to start.
Yeah, absolutely.
If he makes a trade to shore that up, and I wouldn't be surprised if Evanson breaks out of camp next year. And I died on the
interesting.
Yeah, exactly. We should get the glasses. I died on the Seider's break with the team, and I think he's going to be better than we even realize. And I'm glad to see it's worked out, but nothing's guaranteed. Yzerman's spoken about that. To what you said, Pat, about Helene St. James, she's 1,000% correct in the effect of, Yzerman wants to see that incremental increase. That was the whole thing with Blashill too. Are they seeing it? Well, defensively, no, you've taken a massive step back. It's been brutal. There's no way around it. Where the Red Wings are really going to be, this is not as much of an important offseason, I think, as we thought maybe back in October, November, December.
Sure.
But he's got to find those pieces, and you got to figure he's going to target that second line center at some point. Because Pius Suter's been good, but I don't think he's the answer. But I think if you put him on the third line, you make an interesting argument there. However, regressing to the mean, maybe. What you said about the points, Pat, right on. Devin, 1,000% is right. And I probably should have just said 3 seconds. Devin's right. I'm done. Thank you.
All right. There we go. We want to hear what you have to say about it at home. So drop a comment down there. Let us know what you think. Have the Red Wings performed to your expectations this season? And oh, by the way, while you're down there, you're going to see a link for Morning Skate. Don't forget to sign up for it. Or you can go to morningskate.io so you don't miss the best daily hockey newsletter on the planet. It's delivered every weekday at 8 a.m. sharp. Be the first to know what's happening in the world of hockey. Toss us a like, subscribe to the channel. Let's move on. As the great Ned Flanders once said, take a trip to Seider Town. Mo Seider, well, if it wasn't fun watching him score on a really nice setup against the Hurricanes, in fact. Look, I'll make this one short, sweet, and to the point, and really quick to the OG host of the Hockey Writers Grind Line. Tony Wolak is going to be dropping an article on Monday about this very topic, so make sure you check it out. But is Mo Seider a lock for the Calder at this point? I mean, he's 4th overall in rookie scoring, 47 points behind Zegras, Raymond, and Bunting. The only thing he can't do is a lacrosse goal, or he'd definitely be a lock. 41 assists, lead all rookies. Again, I mentioned, though, he hasn't done the Michigan, but it is great that every time Zegras does that, they still have to reference the state of Michigan. Isn't that wonderful? I digress. Nate, we're going to start with you. Everybody at home wants to know, is Moritz Seider a lock for the Calder?
Wasn't Zegers the one everybody wanted before Yzerman took Seider? I believe it was the same draft, or was it? Yeah,
same draft. Yeah.
I wrote about this actually this morning. I said after he scored the goal against Carolina last night, that's pretty much it. Check all the boxes, circle, highlight, asterisk, whatever you want to do. Moritz Seider is by far the Calder winner. Yeah. And I referenced Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes being 1 and 2 during the pandemic shortened season that was interrupted. They were 1 and 2 in Calder voting. Their numbers were better with less games, but both were playoff teams. Seider's got nobody. I mean, no disrespect. I don't mean to besmirch anybody on that blue line. Seider can be paired with anybody, and he can make them look better. And then he can still make plays where he's standing somebody up, or he's going right into the slot to bury a shot that Larkin makes just an unbelievable play to even happen in a game they shouldn't even be winning, or even in a point to win. Seider is the Calder winner. If he doesn't get it, fine. You know what? He's going to win a Norris. He might win two. Yeah. Maybe he wins as many as Nicholas Lidstrom. But the thing that I wrote today is they've been dying for a decade to have an anchor on that blue line. You got him. And kudos to Yzerman for making a gutsy pick when he'd been on the job for barely 2 months.
Good stuff. Before I go to you, Devin, since I'm busy plugging THW articles, our fearless editor, producer, and prospects guru, Matthew, he'll be dropping his Calder rankings, I think for April, coming up here in the next week and a half or so. So keep your eyes peeled for there. And Matthew, I know you're listening. I don't want to hear any of this Bunting stuff. Okay. I don't want to hear it. Do you know who he plays with? I don't want to hear it. Okay. Anyways, we can talk about it after his first round playoff.
On guard, I would like to hear a Bunting reference.
Oh, we're crossing over now. I like it. Okay. Keeping it on the rails. Devin, we got to come to you. We already know Mo's a lock for an Emmy for the Mojo show, but will he be a lock for the Calder as well?
Pretty sure when Michael Bunting was born, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was still on the air. So, and the original one, not the new one that came out.
Then not the new one. That's like depressing, apparently.
I stole some time in the front nine, so I'm gonna keep this short and simple. When they announce the Calder winner, the sun will be shining, and so will Moritz.
I feel like I need to just make that a status on Twitter or something. That's perfect. Well said. Poetry. Since we have a little bit of time left over on this one segment, I'll go ahead and pile on here and say, you can't say he's a lock. Realistically speaking, I hate to bring the voice of reason in here, but you can't say he's a lock because you've got players who put up more points. They may be on better teams. With Zegras, no, but you look at, Bunting again, and it's a bummer that imagine him on the Coyotes. They'd maybe be a little bit further along had they been able to retain him. But at the same time, I think you look at what he's done as a defenseman, as a rookie defenseman, and he's right up there with all these forwards that are from a point production standpoint. And then you look at the things that he does that aren't on the score sheet and the caliber of players that he's been paired with. Sometimes you can't help but feel bad for him, and he's making the best of it. And he's really impressing a lot of people. So I think, look, you can't say he's a lock, but Nate, to your point, he's as close to a lock as one can be, because when you look at it at the end of the day and you take it all collectively, I don't see any rookie that's outperformed Moritz Seider this season. All right. Good stuff. Good talk. Let's talk about kind of I don't want to call him a breakout player because we were talking about him about this time last year as well. We talked about him a little bit on our last show as well, Michael Rasmussen. And the question isn't this time, are you surprised by how he's been coming on? The question here is, where do you see him fitting, center or wing? Just as a heads up, Blashill has basically kind of said previously, he pictures him as more of a checking line center. That it makes sense. You look at his big frame, you look at how effective he's been in front of the net as that net front presence, and it makes sense. So I could certainly see that, but he's been effective on the wing as well. So where does the Michael Rasmussen saga end? At center or at wing? And Devin, we're going to come to you first on that.
I think this is really interesting to think about because let's face it, when it comes to the Red Wings prospect pool right now, there's a lot of depth on the wing. There's like, you can go down the list and pretty much every top forward on the prospect pool is a winger. When it comes to centers, I mean, Nate, you talked about it earlier. Yzerman needs to go get a second line center or, potentially draft somebody who's as good, if not better than Dylan Larkin. This team's hurting for centers. And if Rasmussen can develop into that checking line matchup center that they envision him to be, that's valuable. That's a guy that every championship team has. And if Ras is going to play like how he's been playing over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, he could easily carve out that career for himself. I think it will ultimately depend on two people. It will depend. Well, I guess it'll depend on three people. One, Steve Yzerman, because it always depends on him.
Yes. That's
Two,
true.
It depends on who his coach is, because if Blash can say he envisions him as a checking line center, but if Blash isn't behind the bench, well, then who? It depends on what the other guy thinks.
Mm-hmm.
And then third, it depends on Ras, because if Ras, develops into that center, then he's going to play center. If he if he is way more effective on the wing, then they'll find a way to stick him on the wing. I think for my part, I like the idea of him developing into a matchup center just because of the amount of wingers the Red Wings have in their system already. So it basically just fills a need. And if he can't become that center, maybe you try him on a wing, maybe he becomes a trade asset. But I do think the goal for him is to be that power center that kind of like Brian Boyle back in the day, that teams just do not want to see on the ice when they're going up against them.
Yeah, Boyle was at the top of that list too, to the point where even to this day, if my wife, who doesn't really care much about hockey, if she hears his name, she's like, "Oh, him." Yeah. So credit. That's a fantastic reference, because as much as you have that, him, that's the player you want on your team.
That's what you want from Ras. Yeah.
So I love it. Nate, coming over to you. Where does Michael Rasmussen fit in long term on this team, center or wing?
So it's funny, that Boston game, he was in the middle of everything, and he centered a line in that game, but then he was on the wing in the following game. I actually asked him about that, and he talked about the biggest difference was for him was on the wing, he can get to the forecheck quicker. He can kind of cause more chaos. And his objective when he's on the top line with Raymond and Larkin, just cause chaos. Get out there, get the puck, go to the net. As a center, obviously, he has to be far more responsible defensively. Yep. He's got to be back. So here's where it's interesting. If you look at the trajectory of what he's done, where he kind of hit that wall was like October, like late October, mid-November, December, where they were kind of tinkering with him. And it was more, let's put him at center and see what he can do. Well, he was getting beaten on the boards. He was light on his skates. He wasn't scoring goals. And so people were like, oh, he's done. He's a bust. Well, no, he's just learning a role. And everybody forgets he's still super young. He's 22, like 22. Yep. It's because he jumped between June. He started with the Wings. Then he went to junior, then the Wings, then he went to Grand Rapids, and he came back. I digress. I think with Devin, I'm going to go the reverse. You hold on to a guy like Rasmussen, because I think on the wing, he's extremely valuable, especially put him on the power play. He has a nose for the net when he doesn't have to worry about the defensive side of the game. You got some wings that are expendable,
Mhm.
you can deal.
Yeah.
But one thing I'll get that what he said at the end is it's good playing with anyone in our lineup. That's a guy you want on your team when he answers a question like that. He will play whatever role you want, and I'm pounding the table. If I'm anybody in that front office, this is a guy I want to keep. He's not, maybe he doesn't get you 20 goals a year. Maybe he's a Dan Cleary, Swiss Army knife type of guy.
You got to have him.
Yeah, you got to have him.
You got to have them. Role, I believe they call them role players.
Yeah.
And yes, agreed. Got to have them. Good stuff. All right. Last topic of the day. And I love this one. I don't know why I love this one so much, but I do. We'll make it quick. But I want to hear your case for Marc Staal and or Sam Gagner. Do you keep them? Do you cut them loose? Like, do you bring them back? Both, none, one or the other. Really quick, I'll start. I don't I don't see any realm where I would bring Staal back, to be perfectly honest. Personally, I think there are better options out there. I think you got some guys waiting for a shot as well. I appreciate the service. You know, Staal was sent over in a tough situation for him, to be perfectly honest. He's handled it as a professional. Nothing but mad respect. In fact, I wrote an article last year that was titled Marc Staal is not as bad as you think he is. And it's one of my better performing articles to date. Also has some of the more interesting comments I've seen. Good stuff. Sam Gagner, super quick.
Ooh,
I don't know.
Ooh.
I don't know if I'd bring him back or not, but I really like how he plays on the penalty kill.
Yeah.
I really like how he plays on the penalty kill. And like, I don't know if that's enough reason to bring anyone back. I lament my own GM skills all the time, but I really like how he plays on the penalty kill. So I could see bringing him back. But all right, Nate, we're going to come over to you next. The case for Marc Staal and or Sam Gagner. Do you bring him back?
Of course, on the one I didn't want to go first on. I was going to ask.
Well, I went first for what it's worth. I put myself out there for all to see.
Rock, paper, scissors, Devin. All right, so I'll go opposite on you. I know that Staal and Gagner are good locker room guys. I know that they're very much well respected, especially if you watch the Mojo show. They talk specifically about these two guys. Both Blashill, Larkin, and I believe Rasmussen at some point have talked about just how important they are to these young guys. Now, again, I think it's all domino effect. It really depends on what Yzerman does this offseason. If he decides to go younger, he's going to go younger. If there's a new coach, that changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
I think Staal is a good guy to have, you know, second, third pairing, potentially third pairing, especially if Edvinson's going to come into play. You don't know. Donovan Sabrango might blow everyone's mind. He's a baby.
Yeah.
I think he's still 19, in fact, and you just never know. Gagner actually he's had his best season in 4 years.
Yeah.
And he's a right-hand shot. I think if anybody out of the two is going to stay for sure, it's Gagner. For Staal, I don't think Stahl's out either. They love the guy. They love him. He's got the A on his sweater too. So, honestly, I'm going to go against you on this one, Pat. I think they both stay. I think I could see them both hanging around because it'll be also a very reasonable price to it.
Yeah, I think it's fair. No argument here whatsoever. So good stuff. Devin, last word of the show. Marc Staal, Sam Gagner, what say ye?
What I love about both of them is that they both understand their roles with this team, and they fit in those roles really well. They're basically both the team dad, just the one's a forward, the one's a defenseman. And for a team that's, young and gonna get younger, you gotta have those guys around. I think the Red Wings are going to have a veteran guy on defense. That right side's still young. Left side, you have Edvinsson, and you have two more spots you got to fill. Maybe Jake Wallman's one of them. Maybe he's not. So then you got to have at least one guy in there who's, seen some things. And I don't know if Staal is that guy. If you can get someone better than Marc Staal, you should. But he's a good, he's a known commodity at this point, and he is well liked in the rest and the restroom, the locker room. And that counts for something. I could see Staal coming back, but he's definitely, I agree with you, Pat. He is someone that you can definitely upgrade on, especially knowing that this defense is not in good shape.
Yeah.
That's an easily identifiable thing where it's like we gotta improve on Marc Staal. Sam Gagner, I think you keep him, and the reason why is because he, like that goes back to what I said to start this. He knows his role. He knows he's a fourth liner. He knows, and if you have guys step up and make the team, and push people down the depth chart, I'm sure he will be fine with taking the odd night off. He doesn't need to play 82 games a season. He's, like you said, Pat, good penalty kill guy, team dad. His randomly producing offense really well this season. I wouldn't bank on that next season, but depth scoring. He's just one of those guys that also, he's a leader without a letter. If Staal leaves and they keep Gagner, I wouldn't be surprised to see the A go from that jersey to that jersey. Yep. So, and he's going to be cheap. He makes $800,000 or $850,000 this year. Can't see him making much more than that. So, you got to have these veteran guys around while this team grows up. And these guys have fulfilled that role in their 2 years with the Red Wings, and they've kind of earned the right to do it for another year. It's just like you said, Nate, it just depends on whether Yzerman wants to steer the ship in a different direction.
So if I'm recapping, I believe we got 1 yay on Staal and 3 on Gagner. So
one other thing about Gagner too is he's only 32.
Yeah.
Think about it. He's been in the league since 2007.
Yep.
I want to throw this out there too, real quick. Gagner, I think, was the 6th overall pick in 2007.
Yes.
He was a top 10 pick.
Yep.
And he, obviously he had his quality seasons. I don't think he ever hit more than like 55 points in the NHL. For a guy like, I'm going to throw this name out there, for a guy like Filip Zadina, who is not living up to draft expectations, I think it is phenomenal to have a guy like Sam Gagner around who learned that he's not going to be a 100-point player in the NHL, and he learned to make himself useful. I think having guys like that around as, these top prospects come in would be great for their development.
Yep. Good stuff. Well, good show, guys. Good show. Now, in case we haven't convinced you guys at home with our first 2 plugs, sign up for the Morning Skate newsletter so you'll get to look like a hockey genius at 8 a.m. every single weekday. Whether you reuse the witty lines, looking at you, 100 proof maple syrup, or roll off any of the mind-blowing trivia every morning because your friends need to know more about Hobie Baker Award winners. I'm telling you, they need to know more about Hobie Baker Award winners. It is the kind of content that puts a smile on your face. Join the fun at morningskate.io. Don't forget, toss us a like. Let's hear from you down there. Subscribe to the channel. And thank you again for joining us for yet another grind. That's our show. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.